of audience will be on the YouTube.
Right.
Umesh, we are ready to start at 4 o'clock.
Yeah. Okay.
All good?
Yes, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Just finalizing this live streaming as well, sir, on the YouTube. It is done, sir. Just there will be some lag.
Audience will be on the YouTube.
Shakil, we are good to go.
Sir, now we are live on the YouTube, sir.
Yeah, Umesh, you can actually mute everybody except one, and then spotlight speakers.
Yeah.
We are live on YouTube now.
Sir, shall I mute all you were saying, sir?
Yeah.
Sure, sir.
Otherwise, there will be a lot of crosstalks. I think you should mute and then spotlight and unmute.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes. Sir, I'll be muting all. Whosoever wants to speak next, please unmute yourself and then speak. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. We are live on YouTube now.
Sudarshan, sir, we are live
Still
on
5
YouTube.
minutes are
Sir.
there.
Yes,
Have
sir.
time.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Exactly at 4, you can just start, Shakil.
You still have 4 minutes.
Yeah, we have 4 minutes, sir. Yeah.
Whether our GD Khalid sir has joined.
Oh, that's great, sir.
Huh? Is there? No.
Madan Gopal has joined.
Madan? Madan?
Yes, I think I will ask him to. He hasn't joined the audio yet, sir.
Okay. Umesh, has Kale sir joined by any chance?
Sir, Kale sir. No, sir.
No.
Yes,
Umesh,
sir.
I am audible.
Yes, sir. Sudarshan sir, you are audible, sir.
Thank you.
Ashok sir, Kale sir has not joined yet, sir.
Okay, okay. Right. Huh.
2 minutes to go, sir.
Yeah.
I would like to know if all the attendees are able to see the audio, see the video, and then are able to get the audio as well.
It's quite clear.
Yeah, it's clear.
Well defined.
Yeah, it's clear.
My face is clear, then everyone is clear.
Guru Raj Kulkarni is not here.
Gururaj is not seen.
Maltesh is not there?
Many of them are on the YouTube.
Yeah, yeah. Maltesh.
Oh, he has joined with the
He
Jan
just joined.
Gururaj, has he come? Gururaj Kulkarni?
Somebody should call him up.
So shall we, sir?
Yes.
Yes.
I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
it's
go ahead. Go
4,
ahead.
4 p.m. And here we go. Namaskar, Sat Sri Akal, Adab, good afternoon, Ajeet, and all those who are on the call. I, your host, Shakil Gundagi, extend a very warm welcome today to our special program organized by the Ajeet's Knowledge Forum under the auspices of the Ajeet's Alumni Association for ex-students of Sainik School, Bijapur. We begin today's program with an introduction by Sudarshan Satija, the head of AFK. Sudarshan Satija, sir.
Thank you, Shakil. Dear Ajeets, Ajeet's families, and Ajeet's friends, Namaskar to all our participants who have joined us from all different continents. The journey of Ajeet Knowledge Forum, the AKF, has been gaining momentum ever since commenced its first session on 14th August 2021 on behalf of the President of Ajeet Alumni Association, all Ajeet members of Ajeet Alumni Association, I welcome Shri Shyam Benegal, an internationally acclaimed filmmaker, director, and socially concerned personality. We await eagerly to hear you, sir. We also welcome with equal warmth and respect Shri Suresh Heblikar, a multifaceted personality known for acting and directing movies that matter most for our society. We have amongst us Shri Gururaj Kulkarni Nadgod, an ardent admirer and himself a filmmaker. We will be seeing the documentary made by him on our esteemed chief guest. We welcome our distinguished guest, our respected teacher, Shri G.D. Kale sir, Shri Madan Gopal, IAS, formerly Additional Chief Secretary, Government of Karnataka, Executive Committee, Karnataka Eco-Tourism Development Board, and Chairman Task Force National Education Policy, Government of Karnataka. Shrimati Savita Amra Shetty, Chairperson, Karnataka Silk Marketing Board, Bengaluru. Dr. Raju, an IAS officer, formerly Additional Chief Secretary and Member Board of Revenue, Government of Bihar. He is now promoting Ayurveda based on his more than 30 years of research. On behalf of all the Ajeets, we welcome all the Ajeet families, Ajeet friends. We welcome the President of AAA, all our seniors, and every Ajeet who is here from across the continents. Welcome one and all. We are happy that you all are here at the invite of Ajeet Knowledge Forum. Ajeet hai, Abheet hai.
Thanks, Sudarshan sir, for that wonderful introduction. Friends, before commencing on today's program on the history and impact of Indian cinema on our society and the likelihood in the 21st century, it will only be apt to pay our respects and homage to one of our enduring and most loved luminaries of the Indian cinema and Indian film music, Lata Mangeshkar ji, who passed away a few days earlier. may I request all of you to kindly stand up as we observe a 1 minute silence in memory of the departed soul, Lata Mangeshkar ji. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much, one and all. Before we begin today's program, we would like to play our school song, Ajeet Hai, Abeet Hai. Just for those who are not familiar with the motto, Ajeet Hai, Abeet Hai was the motto bestowed upon the school by our beloved second principal, Air Commodore K.D. Singh, in the late 1960s. Ajeet Hai, Abeet Hai symbolizes all that is enthusiastic, all that is energetic about Sainik School, Bijapur students, both the present and the former. So let's listen to the school song, Ajeet Hai, Abeet Hai. May I request you all to please kindly stand up for the school song, please.
Our school is a nice and wonderful place, where we are taught one and all to run life's race. Bright may be the light and great be its fame. Forever it will shine and long live its name. There's a grand school at Bijapura, ever flying a deep colored through. Be they vadeyara vaisala chalu, Adishai Vijayanagar Rashtrakuta. And never to heal. It's a fond desire and everyone's wish to be Ajeet, Abeet and to accomplish. There's a grand school at Bijapura, ever flying Ajeet color true. Be they vadeyara vaisala chalu, Adishai Vijayanagar Rashtrakuta too. Ajeet hai, Abeet hai, Ajeet hai, Abeet hai.
Wow. After that inspiring and rousing start, let's begin with the program proper. Friends, today it is indeed my proud privilege to introduce a truly multifaceted personality, an honest creator of meaningful cinema, a crusader for social consciousness. Through the movies and documentaries, a doyen and truly a legend of Indian cinema, Shri Shyam Benegal. Born as Shyam Sundar Benegal on 14 December 1934 in Trimalgiri in Secunderabad Cantonment, he was fortunate to be watching movies right from an early age at the Garrison Cinema Hall. From befriending the projector man to getting more access to films and being gifted a camera by his father, his fascination for images and moving pictures was kindled right from his boyhood days. After completing his master's in economics from the Osmania University, Hyderabad, he left for Bombay in the late 1950s, worked as a copywriter and later the creative head of an advertisement firm, and made his first documentary in Gujarati, Gher Betha Ganga, in 1962. He was inspired by maestros like Satyajit Ray and Ritvik Ghatak, besides movies made by Prabhat Talkies Studios, Mehboob, and New Theatre Studios, amongst others. He made a thunderous start to his career as a filmmaker with Ankur, his debut film in 1974, which bagged 3 National Film Awards and 43 other awards, including a nomination for the Golden Bear at the 24th Berlin International Film Festival. He followed it up with Nishant and Manthan, where he involved 5 lakh farmers of Gujarat to crowdsource the movie with great box office success. His trilogy of Ankur, Nishant, and Manthan, dealing with contemporary situations in India, depicting feudal oppression, economic and sexual exploitation, and highlighting women's rights issues, quickly established Shri Benegal as a serious filmmaker who brought about India's diverse social issues on screen with a rare sincerity and sensitivity, yet stark, explosive reality. Shri Shyam Benegal taught at the FTII Pune between 1966 to 73 and has mentored and introduced a host of brilliant performers, scriptwriters, cinematographers, and technicians. He has been a member of Rajya Sabha, and his contribution to improving Indian cinema and society at large has been phenomenal, as he continues to work tirelessly even today to depict India's diverse stories to all. So without wasting any more time, let's all sit back and savor a small tribute to Shri Shyam Benegal in the medium he loves so much. Presenting Shri Shyam Benegal, Padma Bhushan, Padma Shri. Umesh, yeah.
Yes, sir.
इन्हें मुंह नहीं तो पापा हम काम मांगने आया था, इसको मारा। तेरे दिल में काला था, इस वास्ते डराना तू। तेरी शान मिट्टी में मिले। तू बड़ा आदमी अपने घर का होएगा, समझे? हम तेरे खरीदे गुलाम नहीं है। हमको तेरा काम नहीं होना, तेरा पैसा नहीं होना, तेरा कुछ नहीं होना। सब अपने मुर्दे के साथ लेगा तू। मेरे मर्द को मारा, तेरे को परमात्मा की मार पड़ेगी।
अरमान अली उर्फ हमारे अब्बा। कोई लोग अब्बा को चौक से समझाए।
ये कौन है? पुतला। पुतला नहीं, ये तुम हो।
तो कोई डंडे का आरोप जमाए।
तुम लोग कानून के आंख में मिट्टी ठोकते?
धूल ठोकता है।
क्या?
धूल ठोकता है।
तो कोई हर बात पर गुर्राए।
क्या तुम्हारी? तुम यहाँ कैसे आ गए?
पर अब्बा ऐसी चक्री चलाए कि सब लोग बोले
वेल डन अब्बा।
अब्बा अब्बा अब्बा।
So here was Discovery of India. Now, Discovery of India, Jawaharlal Nehru wrote that book when he was in jail, and India was soon to become independent. So he was looking both at the past as well as the possibility of what kind of future.
Na sadasin no sadasin tadanim nasidrajo no vyoma paroyat kimavari vah kuha kasya sharmannam vah kimasid gahanam gabiram na mrutyuradi damrutam na tarhi naradya anahasi praketa सृष्टि से पहले सत नहीं था असत भी नहीं अंतरिक्ष भी नहीं आकाश भी नहीं था.
We are going to enter into a life of contradictions. In politics, we will have equality. And in social and economic life, we will have inequality. In politics, we will be recognizing the principle of one man, one vote, and one vote, one value. In our social and economic life, we shall, by reason of our social and economic structure, continue to deny the principle of one man, one value.
And I personally think that the Constitution, the making of our Constitution, was a very dramatic and wonderful thing, because if we take you through that process, you yourself will find how exciting it was.
Friends, hope you all enjoyed this small tribute to Benegal, sir. Let me tell you, it's not very easy to capture all that he has contributed, all that he's achieved in such a small frame of time. We are indeed grateful to the maker of this small clipping by one of Benegal sir's countless admirers, Shri Gururaj Kulkarni, New Age Kannada movie maker, whose latest offering, Amrit Apartments, is being much appreciated. Shri Gururaj Kulkarni. Shyam Benegal ji has been the voice of conscience for India through his works, his movies, TV series, and documentaries, with his innate belief that we Indians live with enormous plurality and our identity comes because of our diverse culture and diversity. His honesty of purpose, love for the medium, our country and the people, and above all, his zest for life and work is something we all must emulate. It's indeed a great fortune and privilege today to listen to one of India's most creative filmmakers of our times on the impact of Indian cinema on the society and its challenges in the 21st century. And who better than Mr. Suresh Heblikar, filmmaker of great repute and one of the stalwarts of Kannada cinema, to engage Shri Shyam Benegal ji. May I now request Shiv Prasad Kenneth, my colleague, to kindly introduce Mr. Suresh Heblikar. Shiv Prasad.
Thank you, Shakil. It's indeed a great honor for us to have with us two distinguished, eminent film personalities. Good afternoon, Ajeet. Good evening and good morning, because we have people, Ajeet, joining from different continents. On behalf of the Ajeet Knowledge Forum, it's an honor to briefly introduce Mr. Heblikar, who will be in conversation with Shyam Benegal ji. Heblikar ji is also a national award-winning Kannada filmmaker, a director, an actor, and so also a singer who has to his credit many films. He is also an active environmentalist and the founder of the EcoWatch NGO. He commands high respect for his immense contribution to the Kannada film industry. His movie, Kadina Benki, won him the Best Director Award at the national level and so also the state award. He also won the Filmfare Award for his film Usha Kirana. He is very well known for his role in the film Aparichita. Being an environmentalist, Heblikar is known for using scenes which portray nature and its conservation at its best in most of his films. Heblikar's Shepherds on the Move film has won the prestigious International Osiris Award. He is valued for his broad outlining of the storyline and is known for his nature of letting his cast improve on dialogue. Some of his other best films include Aguntuka and Chamatkar. Heblikar was born in 1945 in Dharwad and spent his childhood days in the creative ambience of the city, which played a major role in building his career. Like Shyam Benegal ji, Heblikar too fell in love with films from his younger days. He attributes his interest in creative fields to his French professor, Mahale, who had come from Paris to teach French at the Karnataka University. Professor Mahale used to show his students beautiful French, German, Japanese, Kannada, and Hindi films, which helped Heblikar to fall in love with films. One of the early films which influenced and inspired Heblikar was a French movie, The Wages of Fear. It inspired him to make short films with his 4 other friends. They used to hire camera for making the film, and Mr. Prasad, from whom they hired camera, was making a movie called Kankana. Heblikar debuted his film acting career in this movie, which also won the National Award. Heblikar is especially known for the choice of actors who he casts in his films. He attributes this film to the filmmakers who inspired him. He was particularly inspired by Stanley Kubrick and his film Mahabharata. He used this philosophy in casting actors in many films, including Kardina Benki and Usha Kirana. He strongly believes that economy and ecology should go hand in hand. He founded the Eco Watch to address some of the environmental challenges. His interest in environment started when he used to edit a magazine called Bhubi Kasam, which informed the farmers about the modern inventions and how they help in combating crop diseases. He made 3 films on the Western Ghats, and all of them won the National Award. This motivated him to start the Eco Watch organization. His organization has planted more than 4 to 5 lakh trees in Bangalore alone, and he has also saved a lake in Dharwad, the Kelageri Lake. Heblikar has also started a small biopark where he has planted some rare species of trees, which he brought from the Western Ghats. Today, it consists of 5,000 trees from different species of trees. His biopark has provided solar energy to many government schools, which had computers, but unfortunately no electricity. There is so much more to speak about Heblikar and his contribution, but then due to paucity of time, I will end by referring to a recently released book by Dr. Veena Bharti, Live with Dreams, which is a biography of Suresh Heblikar, and this book was befittingly released by another legendary Kannada filmmaker, Girish Kasarwadi. May I now request Mr. Heblikar to please take over the microphone and engage the legendary filmmaker Shyam Benegal. I also would like to tell all the audience that we have military officers, senior IAS officer, and several of them amongst us, including our non-Nigerian teacher, Sri G.D. Kale sir. Thank you very much, sir. Back to you, Shakil. And may I request Heblikar ji to start his conversation.
Thank you very much. And it's a rare occasion to have Mr. Shyam Benegal to address on behalf of the Sainik School. He's here today speaking on the most important films that have been made in the country. You know, India was known for many, many things like cricket, films, and politics. And films played a very vital role in actually communicating the Indian culture, Indian society. And it also put across many, for instance, the built-in psychological framework of the human mind of the society. We have seen a lot of films in India, which were made by very remarkable directors. Also in Hindi, for instance, we have Naya Daur, Mother India, Kabuliwala, and Shahid. So some of these films were made by distinguished directors in the past. And as we know that, the films which were made mostly in Hindi, they had actors. Why I'm speaking this here is how Shyam Benegal brought a new crop of actors at a time when Indian film industry was ruled by some of the well-known actors like Rajesh Khanna, Dharmendra, Amitabh Bachchan, Sanjeev Kumar, and things like this. Shyam Benegal did not much bother. He was so much fascinated by the themes like Ankur, Nishant, and Manthan, and Mandi. I especially like the film Mandi for its various dimensions, various facets, various layers music and the structure and many things. You see, as a film director, to some extent, I can appreciate. So he brought out, I mean, a bunch of actors who were not known at all. There were, and many of them became very popular actors later. For instance, you know, Shabana Azmi, Smita Patel. Of course, Girish Karnad was known for his writing and all that earlier. But as an actor, he had to start with Shyam Benegal's films. And he had made only one that was not popularly known, like, for instance, U.R. Ananthamurthy's book, which was made by Tom Cowan. That was, Mr. Reddy, who directed it. Tom Cowan was a cameraman from Australia. But it was the Shyam Benegal's films which established Shyam Benegal not only as a great filmmaker, as a celebrity, or as an illustrious person, but a person who went beyond many of these parameters. He's known intellectually all over the country and also outside. And anybody, although he has made mostly in Hindi films, he's known all over the country for the kind of films that he has given to us. And at a time when, as I said earlier, the Indian society was, was fascinated by many other actors who came mostly from North India. So this is how I want to begin. And of course, Mr. Ashok Dalwai and Mr. Gopal Hosur wanted me to ask questions like, for instance, how his filmmaking journey began. For instance, as a young boy, even about 5 or 6 year old, he was fascinated by the films like Rama Shastri and another film which I don't remember. So as a kid, as a young boy, he had this inkling in his mind to do something with this. The flip books and all that he talks about is another thing. But the filmmaking is a different kind of a ball game. It's a different kind of an art. It is not just painting or writing a book. It's a composite world. It's a composite art. You have to have an imagination. You have to have thinking. You have to have themes in your mind. You have to be influenced by various images, various actors, various directors, various locations. So all these things, it's a very complex thing, filmmaking. So we have Mr. Shyam Benegal as an outstanding filmmaker. I even think that filmmaker itself is a small word for him. He's much beyond that. He's much beyond that. I have seen he's talking to Satyajit Ray, and I have seen him being interviewed by so many others. So we'll go ahead with this. Let him begin to say how films have made an impact on Indian society. Have they changed the outlook of the people? Have they changed the minds of the people? Have they changed, for instance, his Ankur, which deals with the feudal system, when it was his first film? I just wanted to know whether the film created ripples among the younger students. For instance, when Shabana Azmi was exploited under this system, and then her husband was being beaten by this man, Anant Nag. So did it create ripples among the student community? Did it create a stir among the certain sections who did not like this kind of a feudal system? So I just want Mr. Benegal to go ahead with it. How films have made, totally, the films have made an impact on Indian society and on Indian mind. Yes, Mr. Benegal.
Let me start from the very beginning of Indian cinema. It goes back to, in India, cinema came just 3 years after it was invented. So when it was in France, when the first film was made in 1893, we made our first film in 1896, just 3 years. So cinema came to India before it went to many other countries of the world. So actually, cinema is as old as cinema itself in India. It's amazing that we have had this medium to work with from then, and from the last decade of the 19th century. So by middle of 1910, 1915, we'd already started to make films. And it was being used in the beginning as, to record events and various other things that were happening at the time. For instance, the Delhi Darbar that took place when King George V came and all that sort of thing. Now, all that was being filmed. And similarly, immediately afterwards, you had films being made very much like Hollywood was starting to make films at that time. And we had films that were being made, silent films at that time, of course, which actually were being shown to audiences. Dadasaheb Phalke, for instance, when he made his films, and because he was the first filmmaker, we consider him our first filmmaker in India. When Dadasaheb Phalke started to make his films, he gave it a certain kind of genre, which was very interesting. And that was a traditional genre through which a lot of entertainment in India used to go, which was the mythological. Because it started because we use mythologicals were very, very popular in our country, both in rural and urban India at the time. And you had a lot of theater, different kinds of regional theater, as well as Hindi theater and so on and so forth, doing things from the Ramayana, Mahabharata, and from the Puranas and so on and so forth. So the mythological, we began with mythologicals, but what it required, what mythologicals required was very interesting, because a lot of things that appeared to be supernatural had to be depicted in the cinema, which meant that Indian cinema was already experimenting with ideas that went way beyond the simple, straightforward, filming of events. It went beyond that. It meant that you had to be creative and do all kinds of different kinds of cinematic, ideas that were not necessarily purely realistic. Now, all this was happening in India when a large part of the world hadn't even started to begin making films. So it's very interesting that we had cinema, which was almost as old as Hollywood, and with the same amount of experimentation and development. So we were really very close to what was happening in the rest of the world as far as cinema was concerned. And this development that went on, very interestingly, came to a sudden halt when sound came into films. The moment sound came into films, the entire manner in which we were telling stories through the cinema left the cinematic ideas. The cinema has its own grammar. There's a certain visual grammar. There's a certain visual idioms which you use to be able to tell a story or to create a narrative. Now, when sound came, we reverted back to the theater. And having reverted back to the theater, we had to make a whole new beginning all over again. Because when sound came, we went back and started to make films that were more like plays, that were more like the drama, popular dramas of the day. And that is when you suddenly had, in our cinema, Indian cinema, something very unique, very different, but also very difficult to handle, because we started to have songs in our films, which was nothing, which didn't happen anywhere else in the world. Our stories had songs studded through the storytelling. And this kind of filmmaking became extremely popular. Not only did it become extremely popular, it became a kind of trap in which you were caught. It was a very interesting thing, because here we were doing something quite unique, but on the other hand, we were like the man in the iron mask. We were trapped in that particular framework of filmmaking. And this you could not let go of, because no distributor, no person who would show exhibitor would want to show a film without songs.
Yeah.
And this was a huge problem.
Yeah.
And so when I started wanting to make films, because, I wanted to make films ever since I was 4 or 5 years of age, because my father was a photographer. He had a movie camera, 16 millimeter. He used to show his family's films to his family, meaning he would film his children and so on and so forth, and have these films shown to his own family and friends. And that was the camera that I took to make my very first film at the age of 12. But that's neither here nor there. But I was quite familiar with the cinematic medium. So I was, because I'd already done little things with it and so on and so forth. So, and I also discovered that there was something like a cinematic language. Now, to go back to the history of Indian cinema, in Indian cinema, the whole idea, the idiom, the grammar of film took a sudden turn because of these songs that would come in between. The way of the storytelling with songs. Now, this was not always properly evolved. There were very few filmmakers who knew how to use songs in films. Because, like everyone, according to me, Gurudutt knew how to use songs in his films. There were some other filmmakers also. Mehboob knew how to use songs in films. But not everybody knew. So most of our films were really like entertainments of one kind or another, with a whole lot of songs studied, dances and songs in between to keep audience interest. And the story itself took second place, and we would tell the same kind of melodrama, melodramatic stories and so on and so forth, film after film after film. Now, this was what was happening when I came into the film industry. And at that time, one of the things, the only people who were making films that were different from all of this, one was Mr. Satish Ray, because he'd already started making films in the middle 1950s. Then soon after that came Mrinal Sen, then Ritik Ghatak, which was in Bengal. And there were a couple of other filmmakers in the South as well, because some of the early filmmakers there who had trained at the Pune Film Institute, because the Pune Film Institute had started by that time. So you had people like Adur Gopalakrishnan and people like that who were making films in Malayalam. And then soon after that, oddly enough, you had people in Kannada, Girish Karnad and Anant Murthy's story was made into a film. And those kind of things happened. And they happened in the regional cinema before it happened in Hindi cinema. So by the time I came into wanting to make feature films, at that time, so all these developments had already taken place. So I wasn't any kind of real pioneer. But what to me was important at that time was that as far as Hindi cinema was concerned, they had forgotten how the medium itself, they were really creating a variety program through celluloid. And this had to change. There was no question about it. And this is what I very strongly felt. And that is when, I was working on different kinds of things. I was in advertising, I was making advertising films. So I had already learned how to make films because of my practice of making advertising films. So by the time I came to Ankur, I had already made about 350 advertising films. So I've become very familiar with the medium, and which was very important to me because I didn't go to a film school. So I had to learn filmmaking by myself. Now that is when, when I first wanted to make the film, when I wrote scripts for various films, and I found it was very, very difficult to get money to make those films. Very difficult.
I find that there is a definite distance between the advertising films and the feature films. For instance, yes, you had learned the techniques of making the advertising films, no doubt. But the advertising films didn't have the kind of the message or the dialogue or the theme, the development of the theme, the imagination, the end of it. Although the goods and services have to be sold by making the advertising films is okay. But then the feature films are not shown or not seen as many times as the advertising films are seen by the people. And advertising can come, in a day about 100 times, they can, release it on the film and or on the TV today, it can be seen. But the feature film is not like that. So you had to perhaps spend more time, more imagination, more thinking, more hard work. And you began making these films at a time when the commercial films were ruling the roost in India. The commercial films were dominating. That was a time when you started making this. I'm not saying that you are the only one, but you are prominently a person who started making the kind of films which were very different from the rest of the other films that were being made, either earlier or at the same time in the industry. So what made you take up this kind of feature films? And I want to know whether you found it as some kind of a blind spot, you see, in making the feature films from the advertising films. What was it that you wanted to make a feature film like Ankur? Yes, but then you must have had certain things in your mind. Well, I had to make this kind of films. So what was it that that was dwelling your mind?
No, definitely. I did want to make films which I felt, represented life in a way that was recognizable, that was experiential for everybody. Not a film in the Never Never Land. Because the song and dance storytelling was never realistic. And I felt that it was very important that particularly in India, that we should reflect on our life, on the way people lived life in our own country, and not the kind of representation it found in the cinema at the time. Now that was very important. And I felt that this was not happening at all. It is happening in some countries of the world, because you see, Hollywood was ruling the world outside of India. And here it was the Bombay cinema or the Madras cinema that was ruling the country.
Correct.
And all of them, they were not representative of human beings as they lived their lives in the country. But in Europe, in particularly Italy, soon after the Second World War, a certain kind of movement began with young people trying to make films that represented them much more accurately than what Hollywood was presenting.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of what one might call the neorealist cinema in Europe. Italians, particularly, the 2 or 3 of those filmmakers, and a couple of French filmmakers like Jean Renoir and so on, they started to make films of this kind. Those films had a great amount of impact on me at that time.
Yeah.
And the odd thing is, how did those films reach us? Because you see, when I was in college, one of the things was that I would voraciously read anything that came on the cinema. I was much impressed by Satyajit Ray. I'd seen Pathe Panchali by that time.
Yeah.
And I'd already seen a few of the films of the neorealist genre, particularly from Italy. Now, having seen Shoeshine and a couple of films like that, it struck me that they represented life much more honestly than what our films did. And having seen all of that, I felt that that is the kind of film I wanted to make. Those are the kind of things that whatever I did, I had to represent our time. It had to be truly the way life was lived in our own country, in rural India as well as in urban India. And so I'd already been writing scripts of different kinds, but I had got no opportunity because nobody was willing to finance these films.
Yeah.
I was taking scripts to producer after producer after producer, which I must have gone to the offices of at least 30 to 35 producers at Bombay, and not a single person showed any kind of interest in what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
But at that time, the odd part of it was because for a living I was making advertising films for an advertising agency, and the person who used to distribute those advertising films all over the country was a person called Mohan Bijlani. And Mohan Bijlani had an advertising agency that used to distribute advertising films. And that company was called Blaze. They had an office in Bombay. They also had an office in Bangalore, by the way, and in different cities of the country. Now, we got to, because Mohan Bijlani and I became friends because I was making so many advertising films for my advertising agency. And he one day told me, he said, this is ridiculous that you sit there making advertising films and keep saying that you want to make a feature film. Why the hell aren't you making a feature film? I said, you finance my film, I will make it just now. And, and he said to me, how much money would you require? So I named a figure. And he said, done.
Good.
That's how I made my first film, Uncle.
Yeah.
So when I made it...
We are saying that the European films... Okay.
No, but what was interesting was that, you see, the amount of money he gave to me to make the film was very, very little. But I said, that's not important. The important thing is to make a good film. And I made the film. Because everybody who was in that film was absolutely new. Nobody really concerned themselves with making money. The idea was that we should make a good film.
Absolutely.
And we made the film.
Yeah.
Having made the film, Mohan Bijlani, because the advantage was because he was distributing advertising films all over the country, he could find distribution for my film. I was lucky. Because you see, at that time, there were other people who were making films as well. But they didn't get this opportunity of getting their films distributed or with any kind of distribution strategy for the films. So in this case, Mohan Bijlani worked out a strategy for the release of these films. And but it made it made my career, because you see, through his manner of strategizing the release of the film did a silver jubilee.
Oh yeah,
I can't believe it. I couldn't believe it myself.
Yeah.
So he, and when I spoke to Mohan Bijlani, he said, "See, you make the films, I make the money, so that's a good deal." Right? So I said, "Okay." But I said, how will I make my second film? He said, I will produce it.
Good.
And after that, he produced 2-3 of my films.
Yeah.
And then, and the same arrangement continued, which put me on my way. So after that, I had no problems at all. I could continue to make films. So it was, I remember once.
Especially,
when
your film,
I remember saying to me once, he said, how is it that you're managing to make film after film after film? You and Mrinal Sen are the only two people I know who make films regularly. It's very, very rare to do that. So I said, but how do you do it? It's the same thing, like you do it, Mrinal is doing it, I'm doing it. So it was possible to do it. But the fact was that you require these breaks. You required those lucky breaks. But you have to be up to it. It isn't as though it will happen just like that. It's not a miracle. You have to be up to it as well. You have to work for it. So anyway, that was the whole process.
Yeah.
But that's as far as I'm concerned. But as far as Indian cinema is concerned, if you look at it, it was a very fascinating period, the 1970s.
Yeah.
Because in Hindi, we were making these films. Then there was a there was an organization that the government of India started called the Film Finance Corporation.
Right. Yeah.
The Film Finance Corporation was developed under the Ministry of Information Broadcasting specifically to help films that were not the run-of-the-mill, that represented the country in a much more realistic way than they did. So, which meant that FFC could finance films not only in Hindi, but in other languages as well.
Yeah, right.
And soon after that, it became the National Film Development Corporation. And then, of course, the rest is history, of course. Anyway, that was the process. So as far as I'm concerned, the process was that I, for myself, was in this fashion. And which according to me, made a huge difference in perception to this of the cinema itself. And this happened before television came. Because you see, when television came, the centrality of cinema has gone. It no longer is central to our kind of entertainment.
Right.
Television is far more central to it. And then cinema is an adjunct of it. It's no longer the central part of that kind of entertainment. And therefore, it has had tremendous amount of influence on the kind of films that are being made today. Because a lot of the films, many things have happened subsequently because of television. One, of course, cinema audiences shrank, cinemas closed down. So many things started to happen all over the country. So whoever wanted to work with the audiovisual medium had to primarily think in terms of television. But in television, you couldn't possibly do only the kind of work that was normally, the television serials and things like that. Some people wanted to make films like the cinema films. Now, in order to do that, the whole process of it your optique had to change.
Right.
You looked at things. So that has been happening. That's a continuing process, which is what is happening at this moment in time. But I find that the generation of filmmakers, the younger generation of filmmakers, they are much, much more, they know the idiom of film much better than my generation of filmmakers.
Maybe it could be right, but what I want to say is, yes, the younger generation may be very conversant with the kind of, let's say, the technological things like maybe editing or using animation or visual photography, visual effects and all those things. But the kind of a thematic, evaluation or thematic narrative that you want to put across, that you are weaving in your mind, perhaps that I do not see in the present filmmakers, mindset. There are some absolutely good filmmakers, no doubt about that. But for instance, now in your film like Manthan, which could have become a documentary, but then you very beautifully made it into a great feature film. It was so very powerful. And from Manthan, if I see Mandi, it's an amazingly beautiful film. Mandi, the kind of music that you have used, the humor that is there, the various kinds of characters, the logistics and all those things. So what kind of, for instance, the musical background or the literary background, since you are in Hyderabad, you are born in Hyderabad, perhaps you must have had some kind of a bearing in the classical Urdu music or the Hindi music, classical, which you have brought in the various films. Like, for instance, that Kiran, she acts in that Sardari. That's beautifully made. And especially Mandi film must have been a big box office hit, perhaps, according to me. I don't know how it went commercially for you.
Well, it went commercially well, but I wouldn't say it was a box office hit. But it was successful. It did
Yeah.
return the investment and made a profit for the producers. But it didn't become a kind of huge hit. You know,
Right.
in that way, funnily enough, Ankur was a big hit. Not so much Mandi, you know. But
Yeah.
the odd part of it is it's not the but what has happened over a period of time, according to me, what you're saying is that they probably today's filmmakers, younger filmmakers, have all this kind of they know the idiom of the time, they know the techniques of cinema better than the
Right.
earlier generation, all of these things. But the fact is that whether then or now, the number of really good filmmakers would not be very much more or very much less, because that has to do with talent, their ability, their imagination, and so on and so forth. That has nothing to do with the amount of knowledge they may have of film. It has to do it has to do with their talent and their own individual abilities. Now, those abilities have very little to do with how much training they have. They can have a lot of training. The innate talent isn't there, then what can you do? But there are talented filmmakers today, and some of those talented filmmakers, they're making some extraordinarily interesting films. But what they have done, because cinema is no longer what it is, because what it used to be when I started making films, where the primary medium, audiovisual medium, was the cinema.
Right.
And the means to get to the audience was through the cinema hall. That no longer exists. Now, that to me is a bit of it's a tragic fact.
Yeah. I want to ask you about when you had a conversation with Satyajit Ray and you made a film. It was a brilliant kind of, it continued later. He spoke so well about the situations, then how he also found that he had made mistakes in the Pather Panchali. The first half of the film was full of mistakes, he said. But the later half, he realized, then he corrected them. And then the Aparajito was a failure. So he did not know what to do. So he made a comedy film. That also did not succeed. So he was telling you that, for months together, there would be no work and there would be no money. But then many of his films, if you look at them, he goes to the core. He goes into the crevices of the human mind and finds out how a character has to be explored on the film. The details, small details, that are very important, I felt, in making the films. He was, of course, influenced by the Western filmmakers that he, like Billy Wilder and all that he spoke about America. And you were also, you said Houston and William Wyler, the American film directors, that you were seeing them and they had influenced you. So you were talking about the European films, and I just wanted to know particularly the French cinema. For instance, Francois Truffaut, who wrote a book on Alfred Hitchcock, Francois Truffaut, then Renoir, the man who made Hiroshima Mon Amour. It's a beautiful film. So these are the French filmmakers, a friend of mine who influenced me by showing the films in Dharwad long back. He said that they did not like the Hollywood films in France. And French made a great inroad into the American society also. For instance, about a few years ago, a film that was made on the feminine theme was released after 25 years, and it ran in about 100 theaters in US, they said. So I forget the name of the movie. Anyway, so whether the French filmmakers or Fellini, the Italian filmmaker, you said Italian filmmakers were great. So many of these French and also Ingmar Bergman, the Swedish filmmaker, whose fleshy nakedness of the film, which he depicted in greater, for instance, reality. For instance, as things, for instance, sex. He would depict it in a way it was happening in the real life. That's how they say that he became very successful. And that means even box office wise, he made a lot of money when he brought out some of these themes and put across to the audience. So some of these films, when you said the European films also influenced you, what about the role? I mean, the French films. For many of them were great poets, great writers. Franca Truffaut was a journalist, and one filmmaker told him that you don't know how to make a film, so you just keep on writing anything about films. Then he started making a film. So I just wanted to know whether some of these filmmakers also influenced you. Because when I look at your films, like this trilogy, like Ankur, then Manthan and Bhumika, they're extraordinarily different. They're extraordinarily original. For instance, you sway from Hyderabad, like where you made this Ankur, to Manthan, which is in Gujarat, and then Bhumika, which is altogether a different kind of a cultural setting, a cultural background. For instance, the Western Ghat, like Ratnagiri and all that. You have brought out in terms of food, in terms of locations, in terms of logistics, in terms of language. So these are very extraordinary, what should I say, extraordinary things in your films. So whether these things came to you from the Western filmmakers in some of these films, or they were your own imagination?
This didn't come from the watching films. This really came from experience of life, really.
Right.
Because it has to do with one's interest. I mean, I've always been very fascinated with our country, with India. I mean, with our nation. And in fact, one of the things that the result of one of these things was Bharatik Coach, which was a 3-hour history of India, which television history of India, which I did based on Nehru's discovery of India. But basically, that was the stepping. I mean, that was a springboard. But essentially, it was history of India. So I consulted probably the best historians alive to get my material for that series. Now, because I've always been seriously interested in our own country.
Yeah.
In many ways, I'm interested culturally, politically, socially. I follow the kind of changes that are taking place in Indian society, both urban and rural. And so it's a subject of huge fascination for me, and it's a lifelong thing.
Right. Yeah.
And a lot of the material for my films come from that kind of thing. So I have subjects that I have made to now. For instance, Arohan I made in Bengal.
Yeah.
And like that, I've made films in Rajasthan. I've made films in UP, and I mean everywhere, wherever I can, wherever I find an interesting subject. So the country, it fascinates me. Our nation fascinates me, and it's that I think is a forever fascinating subject for me. Our country is the most fascinating. Therefore, for me, subjects are not a problem. I've never been a problem because I'm fascinated by the entire country. I can go and make a film anywhere.
Right.
And I don't feel, a lot of people say that languages aren't you. I mean, can you make that kind of transition to languages? I don't feel that is a barrier at all.
Correct. Yeah.
I mean, no barrier at all. I don't have to necessarily, because, I can use the language, Indian languages that I know. On the basis of that, I can make a film anywhere.
Absolutely.
It doesn't have to be. That's a myth, according to me,
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be that I must make a film in a regional language. It doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
Because, in India, we don't necessarily go by languages. It's a political subject more than, it's for political reasons that people use that subject. But the fact is, for the regular Indian, he feels at home anywhere in India. I mean, nowhere. But a Malayali goes to Kashmir and he lives there very comfortably.
Absolutely.
Like everybody else. I mean, he doesn't feel that he's in a different part of different part of the world. He is in India. We all know that.
Right. Yeah.
That's the kind of country we are. So that's why for me, the entire, my arena is the whole country,
Correct. Yeah.
of filmmaking. Yeah.
And of course, because this country has fascinated a lot of people even outside. I mean, the outsiders also love this country. And since we have a history, thousands of years ago, when the Chinese came, the Portuguese came, the French came, the Dutch came, because it had wonderful ecology, environment, history, culture, and all that kind of thing. What I want you to, tell the audience, there are a lot of audience who are hearing you today from the Sainik School members who have, flowered into very various branches. I want to tell them, I want you to, because the amount of time, the research and scholarly work, reading, writing, understanding various cultures and languages that you have gone through, filmmaking is not an easy job. That's what I want people to understand. Because Indian films, by and large, like the entertainment films that we have given to the people understand, okay, some songs are there, some fights, some comedy is there, that's the end of it. But when it comes to people like you and Satyajit Ray in our country, perhaps you two are an extraordinarily great filmmakers. There is no doubt about that. So I want people to understand that filmmaking is not a very simple thing. It's a very complex job. I mean, I want you to, in your own way, because when Mr. Ashok Dalwai wanted you to, speak about the impact of the films on Indian society, on Indian mind. So these things were at the back of our mind, that how films, why your films affect us so much, why they impact us so much. There are so many films, of course, we remember them, like Mother India, the Kabuliwala, but your films are different. Why they are different, of course, you explain to us now. But there is a lot of work which has to go into filmmaking. And it's not a very easy thing. As you were saying, India is a whole arena for you. And then at a time when there were these Hindi films were making a big noise, and you came out in the sense you started making your films and they made an impact. That's very important. They were not just films like, random films, random filmmakers here and there, 2-3 films they make and then end up. No, you continue to make different kinds, documentaries, serials, and great feature films. Amazing kind of, the bunch of films that you have made. So I want these people to understand that how complex and how research-oriented, research-based filmmaking is, if you don't mind.
Not at all. You see, any piece of work that you do, whatever you do need to research. You do need to go into the details of it. You cannot just sort of skim the surface. Now that's for films particularly, because films deal with life. And since they deal with life, they have the complexities of life. And they have the depth of life. All of that has to be constantly explored. It's not just a question of making a film. It's not just telling a story.
Right.
Because, because story can be told in any which way. But what is important is you see, it's like, what is a really good film is not only what you see. It's like an iceberg. An iceberg.
Yeah.
What you see is probably 1/4, above the surface of the water. 3/4 of it is under the water.
Yeah. Right.
Now, when you see that on top of the water, but you have to get an indication of what is underneath. In other words, whatever thinking that you have, the important thing is to lead people into the depth of that thing. Because even something that you yourself may not know. So what are you doing when you're making a film? What you're making, when you're making a film, you are trying to yourself locate that part of the iceberg which you cannot see. You know, that part of the iceberg which is under the surface, which you cannot see. Now, that is so ultimately, it's a process of exploration of life itself. And unless you see it like that, you will never get to the depth of anything. It's very, very important. You may not always succeed. In fact, you may never succeed. But the important thing is you must seek that. You have to, because you have to explore what really life is, what is experience. All of these things, you know, every single aspect of life, you need to be able to explore it as much as you possibly can through the means of your film, through the means of the kind of story you're telling, through the means of the kind of relations you might have with other people, and so on and so forth. So that is the process. Otherwise, why would one want to make a film?
Yeah.
Why does one want to do anything for your life to live, to feel that you have spent your life has been worthwhile as long as you live? Why should that happen? Unless you constantly explore it. And that process of exploration has to come in whatever you do. As far as I'm concerned, my means of doing it is through the cinema. And if I don't expect necessarily that I will achieve too much out of it, but that is the only thing I know. That is the only method I know to try and understand life itself.
Yeah. No, I want certain sections of the society, even the government and also the institutions, to understand that film has to be taught or film has to be studied very seriously. The kind of films that you have made and they make an impact, like you, Satyajit Ray, like Mahanagar and Pather Panchali, these are the films. And they are remarkable in the sense that, as you said, you have to explore every small detail. For instance, in Manthan, for instance, when you introduced for the first time this man, Mr. Nasiruddin Shah, it was such an impact. His one voice, he makes an impact through his presence. He made a wonderful presentation of his own personality. Of course, that is your creation. The way he runs to the railway station to give an idea to Mr. Girish Karnad, by that time the train moves away. These are some remarkable things, like they might, I'm sure, have not come through improvisations. They have been studied and explored definitely by the film director and brought in onto this screen. So the institutions must understand films are not just sources of entertainment. They will go a long way in changing the human mind, the thinking, the process of the life itself. You were talking about, I have heard you saying that the process, you are interested in process, not the outcome of it. In a sense, you compare the process to the sunlight, the shadow of the sun. You don't see lengthening of the shadow. You see only when the shadow is lengthened, not while it is lengthening. Similarly, the process is the same in filmmaking. It involves creativity. It involves hard work. It involves imagination, thinking. It cannot be seen by many people. That's what the film is, all about, I think. So you want, people like you should be able to advise the government to take films in a different way. I don't know, they are giving honors, they give awards and all that, that is true. But by and large, the way films are understood by the people has to be necessarily slightly different from the rest of the society, which takes entertainment as a source of, just joy.
Well, I mean, I agree with you. And of course, as I've done my bit, and I continue to do my bit as far as the powers that we are concerned. You see, but it's a question of more than anything else. I feel that what universities need to do, what schools need to do, what colleges need is to take cinema just as a subject, like you have geography, history, and so on and so forth. Now, we have not used cinema as a subject. We have never thought in terms of having cinema as a subject in school studies. You know, it's like, you know, I need to study language, for instance. I have to, if I have to learn English, I have to learn Hindi, I have to learn Kannada. This is a subject in school. I can learn it there. Now, similarly, I need to study cinema. I need to learn about cinema. Well, it is not only content, but it is also form. It's a language. And you know, you have to understand the language of the cinema. And unless you know the language of the cinema, you can never really appreciate it. It's like, I mean, literature, how will you appreciate literature? How will you be able to say, you know, make the difference between good literature and trash, you know? It's the same sort of thing. It's very important, and we have not done anything in this area at all. Anywhere, no state in this country has done that, because education is a state subject. And you know, I think schools in our country need to have this as a subject from the word go. I mean, you don't have to wait until somebody is 15 years of age or 16 years of age. You can start when you start learning the alphabet. The cinema can start, you can start learning about the cinema at that age. You don't have to be a kind of adult or semi-adult person. You know, that is something that I've always felt very seriously about, that we have not done anything about that sort of, you know, which is very important.
Yeah. And you see, for instance, you made a lot of actors in your movies, and there are actors in the commercial films. Just by one or two films, they become important. They start, you know, feeling very big. Then they enter politics, some of them, and so these are the things. But whereas you looked at your actors from the point of view of, you know, giving out the best of their talent, their merit, their ability to prove their, you know, involvement in your film. So this was this is what made your films more important, I feel. You did not take actors just because of their looks, or they were very handsome, or they were very beautiful. No, you did not bother about that. So this is very important. For instance, you might have made thousands of filmmakers. I mean, your influence must have been on them now because of these qualities which have gone into your filmmaking. For instance, in southern India, we had film stars who became the chief ministers of Tamil Nadu, of Andhra Pradesh, you know, all of them. Anyway, I mean, they were doing mythological films, they became popular and all that. But then films are not only meant to, you know, promote these actors as something extraordinary. Whereas your films don't do that, which I mean, I personally appreciate that. I personally I understand.
I should intervene here, if you don't mind. I should intervene here because you see, I feel the medium itself, the medium itself is larger than life.
Right.
You see, because it is larger than life, it makes everybody larger than life. Now, because it is larger than life, because the manner when people see somebody on the screen playing one or another role, you know, they see them in that light. And therefore, it is easy. I mean, whether it is N.T. Ramarao or whoever who went into politics and became very popular, and you know, some of them became chief ministers of their states and so on and so forth. all of that happened. But the fact is, the reason that happened is because, you see, cinema creates a larger than life persona. Cinema itself creates a larger than life persona. Now, that is an advantage.
Right.
In politics, that's a great advantage. If somebody wishes to use that in their political life, as people have done, and people are aware of it also, that the audiovisual medium of the cinema is such that everything can be converted to larger than life. And then the way the way you empathize with the characters on the screen is extraordinary. It doesn't happen. When you read and when you read a book, it's not the same thing. When you listen to music, it's not the same thing. When you see somebody, and then you see that person as larger than life, and that is very important.
Right.
That's the thing that cinema does, which is the power of the cinema. And that is what I think is something that many of them are aware of also. Because they're aware of it, they make use of it. And that's why it's been used by politicians very frequently.
Right. There is nothing wrong in getting into politics. I'm not saying it's wrong, but then if they come into politics, they should be able to deliver. Because unfortunately, a country which is going through a lot of processes in the last 20, 25 years now. So I wanted to talk to Mr. Ashok Dalwai when he said that the impact on human society and India at a time when we are going through very bitter, tough times, and here nobody is spared, an intellectual or a great filmmaker. Only filmmakers are, to a large extent, protected, or they are being cared by the whole society because they don't belong to any party as such. That is good. But here we are going through a very tough time in India, and at this time, what your films, what do you have to say? The kind of impact, whether on the political parties or the political or the governors, in the sense the administrators of the government. Because everybody likes films. Many of them, many politicians, many of the bureaucrats and all that, they have been seeing the films since their childhood, since their adulthood. So what is your idea of an impact? Like what kind of an impact it can make? I'm not saying on the whole of the society, on the whole of the country, but at least larger sections of the people, what impact it can make.
Well, the impact is obviously huge, because you see, today media is audiovisual, and most of our politicians are seen in this media, and people who know how to use this particular medium well. And one of the people who knows how to use this medium extremely well is our Prime Minister. He uses it extremely well. And some of the secret of his success has to be attributed to his audiovisual persona. Because the ability to use the audiovisual medium well is very important for a politician. Very, very few people know how to use it well. Some people did it quite naturally. There was a time when, for instance, certain kinds of politicians used it very easily without it, as they owned it, as though they owned it. Similarly, our present Prime Minister knows how to use it. But there aren't too many people other than that, who know how to use the medium well. Because you have to understand that the audiovisual medium is of that kind. And this ability is a very important ability, because the medium does it also. It contributes to it. You see, it contributes.
Right,
and And that, I think, is something that we have to understand from the very beginning, which is why I keep saying that, you must have this as an subject of study from the time you go to school and college. It's very important. Very few people realize that.
Right, yeah. You have seen the Mahabharata by Stanley Kubrick, by this who lives in France now. He made this film.
Yeah.
I saw it. Yeah.
Well,
I like the film.
It was really a theatrical production. It was a huge theatrical production, brilliantly done, and it was written brilliantly also. The script of that is outstanding. It's an outstanding script and a very well produced theatrical production, which was eventually put on cinema as well.
Yeah, because when you were talking to Satyajit Ray, and he told you that he was thinking of making a film on Mahabharata, but characters only through playing that game, playing the playing the chart or the pet game. Through that, he wanted to make a film. I don't know. He was able to make later. I don't know whether it was.
No, he did.
But it was.
Unfortunately, because he had a wonderful idea.
Yeah.
But we have all done something or the other. You see, Bharat Reports, I did the Mahabharata myself. I did the two episodes of Mahabharata and 2 episodes of Ramayana.
Did you ever feel like making a film? Sorry.
Yes, carry on.
I wanted to know, since you have shown beautiful landscapes in many of your films, including Ankur, remarkable locations there. Now we don't see such locations after 25, 30 years or 40 years. And I'm sure you are conversant with what's happening with the climate change. The world is going through a lot of upheavals, like China, Greece, Germany, Turkey, all these countries. And recently in Africa, crores of people are trying to find water and food also because of the climate change. It has wiped out all the the topsoil vegetation. You have any ideas of making a film on this future of the environment of the world in the sense, whatever you have? Do you ever entertain this idea?
Well, one is affected by it, whether you like it or not. Because, the process of desertification that is happening in some parts of India, that and then the places where you have this unusual amounts of rain, flooding, and so on. There are changes of these kinds that are taking place. And these are changes that must concern us. Because, they're affecting us in a very serious way, the environmental changes. So environment itself becomes a very important subject to deal with. So one of the things I think is to deal with this in the audiovisual media very seriously. This hasn't been done. Not too much work has been done in this. And I think filmmakers must take it up. And I certainly am very interested and would like to do something in this area, particularly relating to the process of desertification in some parts of India, because it's a very serious matter. And similarly, this matter of constant flooding in certain parts of the country because of this, the destruction of forests, the manner in which it is happening, all of these things, So because it concerns not it's a small, it's a big concern. It's a concern that takes everybody into it, and people are not sensitive enough to understand this, or rather, the business interests, the economy, and the whole process of which the manner in which we are functioning, you have to, because it requires to think in terms that are macro as well as micro. It's not just a question of thinking that it's happening here, not happening there. It's happening everywhere. And it's happening in a way that people don't realize, and we are walking into it with our eyes closed.
Right. Yeah. When is your this recent film which you have made on Mujibur Rahman? I mean, when will it be out?
Well,
in the sense,
I hope
will it take months or?
We should be able to release it sometime during the course of this year, because I've finished shooting the film. I'm editing it at the moment. There are some special effects that have to be done that are being carried on. And we are hoping that we should have the film ready for release sometime in the course of this year. Because it's very important. It's an important film for Bangladesh, and it's also very important, I think, for us. Because, he was an extraordinary person. And his life has many, there are many lessons to learn from his life. So I think it's something that has fascinated me enormously while making the film. I didn't know too much about him before that, except for the fact that the tragedy that befell that family, because, not only was he assassinated, but his wife and his sons and his daughters-in-law, they were all assassinated, except for the present Prime Minister and his sister, who were the daughters of Sheikh Mujib. The rest of the family was wiped out. And, so it's a huge tragedy. It's like a Greek or Shakespearean tragedy. So it's something that I've been most fascinated, not only fascinated, but also much affected, even while I was making the film. So I'm hoping that the film will be ready soon, working very hard on it. And so I was working while you wanted to talk to me this afternoon, doesn't matter. So anyway, hopefully it should be ready and we should have it seen all over the country as well.
Yeah. I would like to ask you about the growth of technologies and which come into the narrative. Whether the technology will play any part in making great films. For instance, I saw that Avatar, James Cameron's. I liked it because he brought a lot of environmental issues, how the indigenous people survive. They fight with the people who come with huge machines and all that, destroying the forest, putting across the fires on fire. These local people, they destroy the whole machines. They destroy the people who built it ultimately. So, and today's films that we sometimes see, the American films and all that, they use a lot of technologies. People come from sky, suddenly they jump on but they don't seem to make any impact.
Well,
like the stories which have been told well. Like the filmmakers who make the beautiful stories, which do not using more technology, they make an impact. This is my individual, feeling, my opinion. I would like your expert opinion on this, whether technology is like, technology in editing, technology may be different formats of camera, and then from negative films to arts, the art we have gone to digital, that's okay. But then the narrative itself has to be there. It has to be told strongly. It has to be put across with a lot of good and solid message. Then only people perhaps will like the films. This is my feeling. I would like you to kindly, give your ideas on this. Whether technology will be really prominent with filmmakers of future.
Well, technology we require
like animation.
We need to develop our technologies. There's no question about it. But it's a very simple thing. Whether technology will control us or we will control the technology. You see, the fear has always been Some of these films you mentioned, Avatar and so on and so forth, films like that. They were H.G. Wells's, War of the Worlds and films, not just a long time ago as well. Now, when you look at all of that, you will find that whether technology can be controlled by us or will technology control us? The question is that. Now, we should be in control of technology. Now, because the development, the growth and the development, evolution, and the manner in which technology is growing and adding ability to us, because, it's extending our own ability. But while it is extending our ability to do the kind of things we never could do in the past, that is one. But on the other hand, we are also at the same time being controlled by that technology. It's a question of we should not allow ourselves to be controlled by the technology. We have to find a balance. That we have yet to do, because we get so fascinated by the technologies that are developing that we might become slave to the technologies. That is the thing. So it goes into the realm, into a philosophical realm as well. The fact is that do we control it or will technology control us? This becomes a kind of conundrum after a while,
Right. Well, hello.
I think that there'll be questions, sir. I think
Suresh, I think, maybe if you can now start winding down, because sir had given us a particular time, and then later on we can have some day in the chat box. I see a lot of questions. We can only say, sir, it is just so riveting, and we would like to listen to the whole night. We would not get bored. The questions are incisive and answers are insightful, and the whole session is so riveting. We don't mind it becoming Rama and Mahabharata. Honestly, I'm a truly fan. We just simply admire you at this young age of 87. You still look so handsome, and you look so smart and more
energetic,
so intelligent. Fantastic. A great lesson to us. Honestly.
We pray for your energy.
Yeah, I swear. That's what I'm getting so many messages here on my personal box to say what a person you have brought to our AKF. I just can't say more than this. So can we just, I think, you can ask some questions, which I think our youngsters particularly who are just 18 and 19, 20, who have a long life to look forward to. How do you advise them to find a purpose in their life? And how do you think they can stick to that purpose, notwithstanding the kinds of troubles and tribulations that you yourself went through to make a success? I think that sentence of yours saying that I had a lucky break, but that's not enough. We need to work hard and be up to that. Sir, can you just share some of your personal life and personal advice? You're somebody who can give us advice, particularly to the youngsters. Sir.
Well, I hated giving advice to anybody because it's because I don't accept anybody else's advice either. It never really made any difference. The important thing is that I think you have to follow your instincts. You have to follow your own instincts. That's more than anything else. That's important. That what is seriously interesting to you, and that is something that you should follow, however unpopular that might be. You should not function because someone else is telling you to do it. You should feel it within yourself that this is what I should be doing. And that is very important in life, I think, from whatever I know and I feel and what I have myself done. Because if I followed other people and went along with that, nothing would have come of it, quite frankly.
Sir, how do you...
I had to follow my own nose, as it were.
How do you entertain
Yes, sir.
yourself, sir? How do you entertain yourself? You give so much to the outside world, but how do you entertain yourself?
How do I entertain myself? It's easy. It's not. I'm easy to entertain. It's not a. I'm never bored. Let me put it that way. I'm never bored because there's a.
Yes.
I do a lot of reading. I'm very interested in music, and ultimately, like we all do, when I have nothing to do, I watch television, which is the most dreadful thing to do, but that's something that has come to our aid from time to time. So I watch a lot of news on television in the evenings. That's my way of relaxing. But otherwise, I do a fair amount of reading. I do a fair amount of reading, and I'm very fond of music to listen to. I can't play anything, nor can I sing, but I'm very fond of particularly classical music, both Indian and Western.
And how about your physical fitness?
Well,
I do so vibrant.
I do you see, my father was very fond of telling me that, it's very important that you do at least 20 minutes to half an hour of regular exercise. And he was a student of yoga, essentially. So he had taught me about 10 yogic exercises, of which 3 are pranayama exercises. Rest of them are physical ones, from head to toe, which I do religiously every morning.
And your diet?
Yeah, which is, it takes me about 20 minutes to half an hour maximum. And that I can do anywhere. I don't need lots of space. I don't have to go on long walks because I may be in the city of Bombay. It's not easy to take long walks without being run over by traffic. So I can do my exercises very much in my own bedroom, as a matter of fact. So that is something that I have learned from my father, and I do that religiously without ever missing out a day. And that to me is very important but even more than the main physical exercises, to me, the most important thing are the 3 pranayama exercises, which have to do with your breathing, which are very important according to me, because you have to keep your mind in good shape, and as you grow older, as we all know, that our minds go before everything else.
Sir, I think with your permission, we will ask. We have our senior most teacher here, who is as young as 90 years, G.D. Kale sir. He may like to just ask something or share. Sure. And after him, I would request our first school boy, Colonel B.G.B. Kumar, who is also here, and of course, Mr. Madan Gopal, who is your admirer. And
Sir, Shri Madan Gopal has asked a question.
Yes, no.
If I may ask on his behalf.
Yeah, before that, we'll ask Kale sir.
Yes, sir.
You would like to say. Then after that, you come to that. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Sir, sir, can you hear us? Okay.
Bhaskar sir, unmute yourself. I think he's.
No,
yes.
He's with my father is with my brother right now.
Okay.
And he may not be able to, he has a difficulty hearing. So he must have, followed the thing to as best as he can, probably. So that is the reason.
Yes. No, we just wanted to inform Benegal sir that sir, the teacher we're talking, sir, is somebody who mentored all of us at the school. One of the first teachers at school, and he continues to guide us and mentor us at this age of 90. So the importance and impact of a good teacher, we just wanted to share with you. In fact, another teacher of ours, BGB Subarab sir, he conveyed his regards to you and everybody. He taught us mathematics, and we remember math so well even at this age of ours. I think we will request Colonel BGB Kumar also, who is there in Coorg, and he's a lover of nature, and he would like to ask you something. Right.
You have to unmute yourself, sir. BJP, you need to unmute.
Okay. Sir, it has been a great honor, and you're, as a personality, highly motivating personality, and it was a pleasure listening to you. I have nothing more to say, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think if you have Captain Gopinath, and then we have General Ramesh Halgali, if they're there, they may also like to ask, share any other.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, and then Madan. Yeah. Who is? Hello.
Madan Gopal. Yeah, yeah. Mr.
Madan,
Madan Gopal.
yeah, Madan. Yeah. So this is your Madan.
Thank you.
He heard to you in Usmania University.
Thank you, Ashok, and it's a great privilege to me to see Shyam Benegal after almost 40 years. So we hosted you, sir, in Usmania University after you made your first film. My question is that no, that was the time. You understand the whole India, including Telangana, was in turbulent times, political, social moments of all nature. So was there any difficulty for you to while making Ankur from status quoist, because that movie has inspired many thousands of youngsters all over India. Just to ask you, did you face any difficulty from the status quoist system?
From the authorities, you mean? Are you talking about from the establishment, from the authorities?
Yeah, from the authorities, sir.
No, not really. I had no problem as far as Ankur was concerned. But certainly when I made Nikam, the censors came very heavily on it and wanted to ban it. And that was, in fact, it was temporarily banned as well. So when that film was banned, one of the things that I did was I decided that I told my producers that they'd have to buy a ticket for me to go to Delhi so that I could meet the Prime Minister. So Mrs. Gandhi was the Prime Minister at that time. So I went to Delhi. Her press advisor was, I've forgotten his name, but he was from Karnataka.
Sharda Prasad ji.
Yeah, yes. So, and I said to him that, look, I want to meet Mrs. Gandhi for at least, even if it is for 5 minutes. So he said, okay, but you will probably have to come to Parliament with me, because as soon as the Parliament session for that particular day is ended, as she comes out, I will introduce you to her, and then you can talk to her. So I told her that this was my problem. There was this film called Nishan, which I had made, and it was banned. And so she said, she just laughed, because this was the time of the emergency, if you remember. So she laughed, and said, why would they want to do something so silly? So I said, I don't know. So she said, because I've seen the film, she said to me. I've seen the film. Because, whenever the censor board used to have any problem with any film, it used to be sent to the PMO's office in those days, to the Prime Minister's office. And so she'd seen the film. And she said, I like the film very much. These are very silly people, she said, and she walked away. And so I just repeated that to the censor board in Bombay. And so then the censor board had to give me a censor certificate. But what they did, of course, was also very interesting, because they had already put it in their records that the film had been banned. In order to remove the film from the ban, they said, we'll have to ask you to cut a few scenes out of the film. I would cut anything. Said, but at least cut a part of the scene. So I said, all right, I can do that. So I cut a few feet out of the film and gave it to them. I said, will this satisfy you? They said, fine. And that was it. So I got the censor certificate. So it was very strange. These things happen in our country, so it was. But these kind of things do happen. Because, later on when I met Manthan, the funny part of it is when I met Manthan, they were they were about to give it an adult certificate. And to give it an adult certificate, do you know why? Because they're being taught how to improve the livestock, quality of the livestock, so that cows can give more milk and buffaloes can give more milk. So it had to do with, crossbreeding and things like that. And then they said, how can you do that? Children will see this. I said, what's wrong with children seeing this? I mean, it's so absurd. But these things do happen. Somebody in the sense of word will say something stupid like that. So anyway, finally, of course, I got it out of their hands, and I did get a universal certificate for the film. And the funny part of it is that I got not only the universal certificate for the film, but that film was invited by the United Nations. So I had a screening for it. I went all the way to New York to screen the film for the United Nations General Assembly that particular year. So, it's very crazy.
Right, sir. So is there any other compelling question from anybody?
Just one last question, sir. You have made a mention about the fact that there are a few very good filmmakers in the present crop as well. You had Mr. Champak Lakshman, Irfan Habib, and other historians to support you for Bharat Ek Khoj.
Yes.
What do you think? I mean, do we also see another Bharat Ek Khoj, or are you disappointed?
No, there are aspects in Indian history that would still interest me to make something on it. There are many areas. But the fact is that that was also helped by, as you named a couple of them, Irfan Habib, a brilliant historian. So was Champak Lakshmi. Particularly for South Indian history, I don't think anybody could match her knowledge. And so, people like that were so helpful. So I have to give them equal credit for all of that work in Bharat Ek Khoj.
Thank you. Thank you very much,
I
sir.
think we'll request Mr. Suresh Heblikar to close the, ask whatever the final questions that you may like to enter into. Suresh, yeah, I think you have to unmute yourself. You have to unmute yourself, yeah.
Suresh sir, you have to unmute yourself.
Jagdish, I think if you're there, just do unmute, yeah.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
I just wanted to thank Mr. Shyam Benegal for having given a very profound and a very big talk, and which I think perhaps most of your listeners would have loved to listen to him. He's a man with tremendous experience, with a lot of scholarship and erudition, lot of knowledge, lot of things, in literature, music, and all that. So it is a rare opportunity for people like us to have to listen to him. I must thank him profoundly for having accepted this invitation and be of his great value to all of you. That's what I wanted to. You want me to ask him any questions? I think you have asked many questions which he has answered.
Yes. No, maybe we can request Benegal sir, if you want, the closing remark that he may like to do. The icing on a cake that we are looking forward to from him. The final statements.
Mr. Benegal? Yeah.
I was just saying that we want to have the final words from Benegal.
Mr. Shyam Benegal?
Yeah.
Would you like to give your final remarks? The closing remarks on your talk? We'll be very happy.
Are you talking to me or are you?
Yes, talking to you.
Okay. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you folks. It's been a pleasure. We enjoyed talking to you. And I think I got something out of it as well. Otherwise, it's not worth it. But I think I got a few things from, and it has been one interesting thing is when people
Yeah.
ask you questions and when you talk and so on and so forth, it also opens up your own mind to a lot of things.
Right, yeah.
And I always enjoy that, and not only enjoy that, but you learn a lot from it. Because as I keep thinking, there are many crevices in our own mind. They start to open up, and you start thinking about things which you didn't for a very long time. Something from your past and so on and so forth. And a lot of things come to the surface on account of this. And I appreciate that, and thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shyam Benegal. Thank you so much for being so
Suresh,
kind.
I would request Mr. Suresh himself to give his closing remarks before we go to the next agenda.
No, it was wonderful because in the sense that we were able to interact with Mr. Shyam Benegal, and in the process, we were also addressing you in the sense, we are trying to, put across our knowledge about films, literature, culture, society, and all that. Because films do, they comprise of all these things. As you said, it is not only a composite art, it's a composite knowledge, web. As a film, we have to reflect the human society. That means economics, sociology, history, evolution of ideas. All these things have to be, considered while we make films. So are you listening? So it's a great opportunity for me also to be in conversation with Mr. Shyam Benegal, who has done a remarkable thing for this country, and he will be remembered for a long, long time to come for all that he has done so far. So thank you very much, Ashok Kalwai sir and Mr. Gopal Hosur, who has been, talking to me on this occasion. For this particular item for a long time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Shakil, so.
Shakil? Thank you very much, sir. Both of you, Suresh Heblikar, sir, and Shyam Benegal, sir, for this very riveting engagement. It kept us totally occupied and interested. A fascinating journey from the 1800s, like Mr. Shyam Benegal, sir, brought out, and Indian cinema and how it has evolved over the years. May I now request Ashok Dalwai, IAS, to kindly share his thoughts on this wonderful experience that we have gone through. Ashok Dalwai.
Yeah, thank you, Shakil. I will just use a few minutes to share a unique character that I saw in today's guests. When I called up Mr. Shyam Benegal, my number was unknown to him. My name was unknown to him. It was just 2 tinkles and he picked up my call. It was late evening, rather into the night. And he immediately said yes when I said that this is the invite from our side. I thought that somebody like him can play truant. That humility that I saw in him, I can say that it is a sign of greatness. The only parallel example that I personally have relates to our former Chief Minister of Odisha, Mr. Biju Patnaik, another legend. Mr. Biju Patnaik, just to share with you, would promptly close his office at 6 p.m. He would clock in at 9 a.m. And once he goes to his home, he takes off his shirt, sits on his banyan on the corridor of his house with stacks of book on one side and with the telephone on the other side. And once I happened to call him for something, and he picked up the call immediately. That was his habit. And I wanted a particular phone number. And I told him, sir, I'll collect it from your private secretary. He said, Ashok, what do you think I am? Can't I give you the phone number myself? That was his approach to life. So when I see people like him and people like Mr. Shyam Benegal, I can just see symbols of humility and humbleness. And that particular character comes from being creative, by innovativeness, by being concerned with the society, and being not just intelligent, but socially intelligent. And this is what I saw in you, sir, each time I spoke with you. And I wanted your landline. You had all the patience to give me number in repeated manner because I was not able to take down immediately. And this particular sign of humbleness is what I wanted to communicate with my friends here. Because the purpose of our Ajeet Knowledge Forum is to understand people and learn from people like you. And I also want to tell them through you that this humbleness is a sign of actual greatness. And the best example I can give you is autobiography of Mahatma Gandhi, where he dissects his own life to the bone honesty. And if somebody like that who can expose his own weaknesses of character can lead the nation to freedom, we can be assured that humbleness can be the best of strength. In fact, Nelson Mandela, who is highly influenced by Mahatma Gandhi, says that if you can't understand that humility is essential to impact the society, then you can be the best failure of this earth, on this earth. So people like them have always emphasized on humility and humbleness. So I want to thank you, sir, very much for what you have demonstrated in practice. We have known you through films that yes, you can be creative and you can be different. As you rightly said, to be honest to the own purpose, to own belief system, and be dogged throughout life. Some of us can start with idealism as we step out of the college, but no sooner do we get into the whirlpool of materialism, we have lost all the idealism. But here is somebody like you at 87, you continue with your doggedness to the ideals. So I learned so much from you, from your life. So I would like to thank, of course, there's going to be a formal word of thanks and our president will share his thoughts also. But I want to personally thank and tell all our friends what a great man I've had the opportunity of interacting with for the last fortnight and a month. And so equally humble is Mr. Suresh Heblikar. Of course, he's a person I know for the last 20 years. He and I together were able to plant the 400 acres of land in Bangalore city when he wanted to take up the plantation or the army land along the interior Koramangala road. And I've seen his commitment to ecology and environment. And he, like you, is also committed to making films which are representative, as you said, of the rural India and not convert that into an entertainment mockery. So we have had another humble person, Mr. Suresh Heblikar. He himself being man of such letters, he was so patient in listening and our request. We sent him a research-based bank of questions. We sent him a structured system. He went through all of that. And he never questioned us as to why you asked us foolish question. He himself was able to make conversation which was not only intelligent, but was something made us understand the whole gamut of society and your own personality. So he's equally a picture of simplicity and humbleness and humility, and equally a great man. And the third person, who is another example, who's not seen on the screen here, is Gururaj Kulkarni, a young man who is your ardent admirer. When we requested him that we are going to have a legend with us as a guest, and this introduction through a oral text is not going to be liked by him, then Gururaj said that, yes, I'm going to make a documentary on my own hero, and this is a privilege. Within just 3 days, he was able to make up this particular document and then be patient with us to make necessary changes. So I would also say that somebody like him, who is now on the path of growth, Gururaj Kulkarni, has been given an opportunity by you to make that film and show it to you. So I'd also like to share with all our friends that how somebody who wants to learn can be an example of humility. So these are the three people I thought who demonstrate the humility, which is your singular character. So thank you very much, sir. And this is a message that we all take from all three of you. And we as Ajeets would look forward to our continued association with you. So that's the little thing that I wanted to say, and thank the AKF for giving me this privilege of sharing the screen with legends. Thank you very much, sir.
one minute before we finish, you mentioned Nelson Mandela. And I had the good fortune of meeting Nelson Mandela in Johannesburg in his home when he had become the president of South Africa. And I had gone with the friends of mine who were also friends of his. So went to visit him in his home. He gave us a time of 8 o'clock in the morning, which was the time he would finish his breakfast. So when we went, because that was the only time he had. And when we went to his living room and we were waiting for him to come downstairs from where he was, and as he came downstairs, we stood up and suddenly found that we were one chair short. We were all sitting in all the chairs that were available there. So I went running. I saw a chair in the corner of that room. I went running to bring that chair. Nelson Mandela stopped me. He said, "This is my house." And he picked up the chair and brought it and kept it in front of us. Sit down.
Yes.
Thank you. You were talking about humility. That is humility.
Thank you very much, sir, for that nugget, for that wonderful nugget, sir. Thank you very much once again. May I now request Shri Gopal Hosur, IPS, President of Ajeet's Alumni Association, to state a few words for today's event. Gopal Hosur, sir.
Thank you, Sudarshan and Shakil, for this wonderful opportunity. I think we are extremely lucky and fortunate to have Mr. Shyam Benegal and Suresh Heblikar with us this evening. For the Ajeet Knowledge Forum and for the alumni, I think it is an El Dorado moment, a treasure of information, a treasure of knowledge, something which each one of us always looks up for an ideal to follow. I think today, Mr. Shyam Benegal's presence and Mr. Suresh Heblikar's presence here has added a lot of value to the Ajeet Knowledge Forum. So I would like to thank Ashok Dalwai and all those associated with this Ajeet Knowledge Forum to have brought Mr. Shyam Benegal and Mr. Suresh Heblikar before us this evening. Sir Shyam Benegal, sir, just one interlude. My association with you and your film has been from 1974, when I was just 20 years old. I came to Bangalore on a stipend of 135 rupees. And every weekend would love to go and watch a movie. The first movie that I saw was in Sapna Theatre in the Majestic area. It was in the basement, it was a mini theatre. It was Ankur. And one scene in that is still etched in my memory. Anant Nag looking around and spitting. I don't know whether you can recall that scene. It's still etched in my memory. Later on, Anant Nag became a very good friend. That was a different matter. But the theme of the movie impressed me so much that in my 35 years of policing career, I always felt that we should support the underdog in whatever we do, whether they're right, wrong, to whatever extent. Our sympathies should lie with the have-nots, with the people who are being exploited. And I think it has stood me in good stead right through my service. I do not know whether, if I'm right, if I can recall from my memory, you had a house in Koramangala. Am I right, sir?
Yes.
Yeah. See, in 1985, when I came to Bangalore City as an assistant commissioner of police, the man who constructed that house, Shahrukh Mistry and Renu Mistry were probably the architects. Their contractor took me to show your house. You had still not occupied that. It is a beautiful house in Koramangala. I can just recall that. It was very artistically done house. I don't know whether you came to stay there or not. I am not
sure. Did. Unfortunately, we never did. Because, my work was in Bombay and there was no way we could have moved to Bangalore. But I loved Bangalore and wanted to stay there, which is why we built that house.
Yeah.
But we never occupied it even for one day.
Mr. Ravi Raju, who was my good friend from the cricket club, he said, "I am building Shyam Benegal's house." I said, "I would love to come and see how it is being done." So I have thoroughly enjoyed that. And we are extremely happy that you have been here and we have been immensely benefited. As regards Mr. Suresh Heblikar, he was an aparichita to me, an unknown man to me, till I watched his movie Aparichita in Sudarshan Theatre in Hubli. I don't know, Suresh, you can recall that. It was released in Hubli. It was about a detective movie.
Yeah.
And I could still recall that you were walking in front of a house, desolate house, and as a detective, you are trying to gather information from around that house. So actually, that has also been a part of my liking and my inspiration in police work. Much later, of course, we became good friends, family friends, and we have been together. You did a fantastic job, Mr. Suresh Heblikar. I must thank you from the bottom of. Nobody else could have probably done in the knowledge of circle of people whom I knew could have, or we knew, could have done a better job today. You have brought out the real facets of Mr. Shyam Benegal's personality and his life and the kind of work that he has done. So once again, I thank all the Ajeet's families, our teachers, revered teachers, everybody for being on this show. Today, being a Friday evening, actually most people are very busy in their offices. I myself have joined this program from my own office. I locked my room and I said, next 2.5 hours, nobody will disturb me. So it has been a great, my only final request to Mr. Shyam Benegal, sir, I think one of these days we must take time out to visit our school, our alma mater, Science School, Bijapur. You would be our revered guest. Would want you to come and see. It's an extraordinarily historical place, right from the time of the Adil Shahis. You have great monuments there. And probably I think it will be a great honor for us if one of these days you are able to plan a visit to Science School, Bijapur. It's again in a very backward region, but has done extremely well. Sometimes we regret for having joined the Science School because we're all brought up in a straitjacket mode. The creativity somehow vanishes because all the time you're focused on joining the defense services, being an officer, or that you get into a job and do some job and get on with that. But meeting creative people like you, Mr. Suresh Heblikar, and all that, it actually inspires us. It inspires us to do the yoga, to do the pranayama every day morning, and to read books when we get time. So it's a great evening. Mr. Ashok Dalwai, I think you have put in a lot of efforts in this organizing this program. My special words of thanks and congratulations to you for this very, very successful program. So last but not the least, once again, I thank Mr. G.D. Kale, sir. Probably he may be short of hearing, but I am sure Datta, he must be staying with Mr. Datta. I am sure he will convey our profound regards to him for even at this advanced age, he has been able to join us. And to all my seniors, juniors, colleagues, friends, it has been a great moment for us. We'll keep celebrating this moment for many, many months to come. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, Sudarshan?
Yeah, I'll just come in. I'll request one of our senior, Captain Gopinath, to say a few words. He's amongst us. Gopinath, sir, can you come in, please?
Yeah, thanks, Satisha. And it's already late, as Mr. Benegal said, that he likes to take his walk. So I won't let you delay, but I think like all of you, I have been overwhelmed. It is a great blessing and a benediction for us from him. Every facet of his life, great inspiration. And I know Suresh also, I think he brought out the best in him. Thanks, Suresh. And thanks to you, Ashok and Gopal and others. My request to Mr. Benegal would be, if he has not already planned it, to write a memoir of his life. It'll be a great bequest so that we can, have that legacy of his life and films. The way he spoke to us and all aspects of his life, his memoir, his autobiography. That will be a fascinating study of not only his own life, but a study of India. Something like the discovery of India of Mr. Nehru. Thank you very much. Big salute to you, sir.
Yes, I think for the kind information of Benegal, sir, Captain Gopinath is one of our first students of Science School, and he's a founder of Air Deccan. So he's the man who served the common man. He's the Arke Lakshman in the aviation industry. So we are all very proud as Ajeet to have him as one of our icons. So we just wanted to share that. Okay.
Thank you.
My line was simply fly.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Captain Gopinath, sir, for making that request to Shyam Benegal ji. He's already written 3 books on his own movies, but yeah, we will be looking forward to that big autobiography, Bharat Ek Khoj, for us. May I now request Vivekanand Bankoli to kindly do the vote of thanks. Vivekanand.
Thank you, sir, for giving me the privilege. Good evening, everyone. It was really a deviant journey of film industry. We were privileged to hear from a Indian global legend, Shri Shyam Benegal, sir, which was anchored by another legendary personality, Shri Suresh Heblikar, sir. Today's event has enlightened all of us with regards to unfamiliar insights of the industry. Also, sir touched upon the present issue of technology, which is now hovering around artificial intelligence versus real intelligence. On behalf of the AKF, all Ajeets, families and friends, I express our heartfelt gratitude for gracing this evening. Our special thanks to Shri Gururaj Kulkarni for being part of this organizing team and the documentary. We appreciate and thank Dr. Raju, Srimati Savita Samar Shetty, Shri Madan Gopal for their presence today. Our heartfelt thanks to our respected teacher, Sir G.D. Kale sir, for being part of this event. Again, our heartfelt thanks to Shri Gopal Hasur, President AAA, Dr. Ashok Dalwai, Shri Matesh Jivannawar, Shri Sidram Nadgowda, Shri Prakash Sagawai, and Colonel Anirudh Gudi for guiding and encouraging the AKF team constantly. Shri Sudarshan Satija, Chairman AKF, Shri Shiv Prasad Kenneth, Chairman AAA Media Committee, and Colonel Shakil Gundagi for leading this AKF operational team. Most and important, our operational team, Mr. Vijay Thakur, Mr. Santosh Humbal, Mr. Umesh Sajjanawar, and Mr. Akshay Patil, who ensured the event requirements are met and who are also still holding the ropes tight, ensuring this event is successful. My special thanks to all the Ajeets who networked across the globe for the fan of the speaker to the advantage of the session and making it purposeful. I thank the print media and digital media from India and abroad. The abroad was an NRI team for the publicity of this event across the globe. Now, we should give a huge round of applause to all the participants who joined us today and made this event successful. Once again, on behalf of AKF and self, I really thank each one of you for making this event a grand success. Thank you and Jai Hind. So,
thank you very much, Vivekanand. Thank you very much for that vote of thanks. Indeed, it has been a great performance and a great collaborative effort by all. We all love our India, and how better to end this wonderful event with our national anthem. May I request you all to kindly stand by for the national anthem. Thank you.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे
अजीत है अभीत है
अजीत है अभीत है Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Grateful to you. Grateful to you, sir.
Fantastic.